So in this warm-up, again, we're going to be using those flowcharts to solve equations. Here's our two equations that we're going to be doing. Again, a one-step and then a two-step equation. So just so you know, right now we'll just label them. This is a one-step equation because there's only one thing to do. And this is a two-step equation because there's two things to do. Okay, so here we go. Same process as we've done before. We know that we're always telling the story of what happens to the variable. So therefore, we're going to start with the variable, which in this case is W. And then we say, what happened? What happened to W? Well, what happened to it, that action arrow tells us is that 15 was added to it. So W plus 15 is equal to W plus 15. I know that sounds silly and redundant, but we need to show this works so that when we start solving the equations using the traditional method, we'll understand why. It'll make sense to us. Okay, so we know, according to this, that W plus 15, of course, is equal to 50. So I know that here I am, W plus 15 is equal to 50. And of course, I'm going to be backtracking to figure out what W is equal to. So I ask that question, I ask every single time, what's the opposite? And the opposite of plus 15 is minus 15. So 50 minus 15, because I'm going in this direction. 50 minus 15, well, 50 minus 10 is 40, minus 5 more is 35. So that tells me that these two things are equal to each other, and therefore W is equal to 35. Okay, so next one, our two-step equation that we're going to solve. This time, I'm just going to be telling the story of what happens to Z. So here we are. We're going to start with Z. Always start with our variable. The first thing that happens to Z. Well, when I look at this, my order of operations, we've talked about this before, but you should know that Z is divided by 3. That's the first thing that happens to it. So when I take Z and I divide it by 3, I end up, remember we're in 7th grade, so this is how we write division now, Z divided by 3. And then the next thing that happens to it, the next action, is that we subtract 12 from it, minus 12. So that tells us that Z divided by 3 minus 12, of course, is equal to Z divided by 3 minus 12. Now, we start looking at what it's equal to. It's equal to 3. So that means that these two outputs are going to be equivalent to each other. So now I just need to backtrack to see what Z is. I ask my question here, what's the opposite? Every single time, what is the opposite? The opposite of minus 12 is plus 12. 3 plus 12, I know, is 15. And then again, what's the opposite? That action up top, when I go forward, is divide by 3. The opposite of dividing by 3, of course, is to multiply by 3. And I know that 15 times 3, well, if I don't know that, I know that 10 times 3 is 30, and 5 times 3 is 15. So I've got 30 plus 15 more, of course, is 45. But if you didn't know that one, you should try to remember it because it's an easy one to remember going forward. Okay, so here we are. My final answer is that Z equals 45.